But we always have fun with these people anyway, and McLean turned out to be a very delightful guy, probably responsible for one of the most hideous things that could ever get stuck in your head. Although you like the song,
I
right?
love this song. You have a weird relationship with American Pie.
It's a horrible song.
I love it.
Bye, bye, Miss American Pie. Took my Chevy to the levee because the Vega engine died. Yeah, because you were just going to throw it right into the banks of the river. What are you talking about? Just let it go right off the cliff, like you were Matthew McConaughey trying to sell Lincoln Continentals. So McLean was pushing a Christmas album. That's why he came on the show. He's talked about Bye Bye Miss American Pie for 50 years. I mean, how much more can you milk that thing? Although,
done well.
wow,
Milk the shit out of it. It's in movies.
Worst song that gets stuck in your head: Bye Bye Miss American Pie or You Light Up My Life, Debbie Boone.
No,
We also
Debbie
spoke
Boone
with about the very same thing.
Yeah, the Debbie Boone one is the one. American Pie I like, and I don't mind it. The Debbie Boone one, and she agreed with you, which I appreciated.
It's annoying.
That's rough.
Yeah. You light up my life.
It's very soapy.
Fuck, what are you talking about?
No one makes me feel that way in real life. Like,
Yeah, imagine you're on your knees and you're singing to this woman that has stimulated you to a point that you never imagined you were capable of going to. You light up my life. No, you don't, man. Usually it's like you may as well just be, it isn't like you're putting water on a fire, man. I mean, what are you talking about? Just dousing the flame of what burns inside me and making me feel like it wasn't even worth living anymore. Huh? Why doesn't somebody write a song about that?
The time. Wake up with Defo, joined by Lubie. Welcome to the Defo Show.
Miami has the Dolphins, the greatest football team. Feel free to sing along, Lubie, because this was like nothing we've ever seen. It's never happened before in the history of the NFL, where a team led by 14 with 3 minutes to go and lost the game in regulation. Unbelievable. Miami Dolphins. So there goes our ticket to the Super Bowl, man. What the hell happened there, Lubie? Is that it? That one punch in the face, was that enough to stop us? This momentum that we had swelling, two lousy teams on tap. You had Tennessee on a Monday night game at home. Couldn't even get a parking pass to this game. They were warning people on the news before the ball game. Don't even bother coming here if you don't have a parking pass because you ain't going to be able to park. Never mind Tootsie's. That's off limits now. And that's a long schlep from Tootsie's all the way to the stadium, isn't it? It's kind of like when they used to have parking in what I called the Camelots. Camelot being, of course, a desirable place to be, but not if you were parking your car in the sand-based Camelots where you needed a camel to get to the fucking stadium. It was unbelievable. So a lot of excitement. I mean, this was supposed to be a celebration. You're going to move to 10-3. You're going to move ahead of the Baltimore Ravens in the race to be the number one seed in the AFC. You're going to move well ahead of the Kansas City Chiefs, who stumbled again on Sunday and lost that game to the Buffalo Bills. You were going to distance yourself from the Buffalo Bills in spite of the fact that they won, and you're sitting there with a 14-point lead with 3 minutes to go in the ballgame. I guess it was 4, but they were still trailing the Tennessee Titans by 14 with 3 minutes to go in a game. And there, for qualified for a bunch of records, Lubie, a bunch of records and distinctions. Teams that were in this position, trailing by 14 with 3 or less minutes to go in a ballgame, NFL history, 4 and 2074.
I mean, see, the 3 minute thing's a little. By the 3 minute mark, they were at the 20.
Okay,
like, that's a little. I hate when they're doing that wrong. Like that's a little.
Yeah. 4 minutes to go and they got the ball back.
4.5 minutes when they got the ball, and again, that's not that different. 4.5 minutes up 2 touchdowns versus a bad team with a bad offense and a rookie quarterback who, outside of one game, has been fucking dreadful.
Yes.
You should still win. I'm not saying, but the 3 minute, they kept talking. I'm like, dude, what do you, I remember saying, did they get down to the 20 in a minute? Like, so no, the 3 minute thing's a load of garbage. It was 4.5 minutes. They got the ball, and Big Fangio, who's paid a lot of money, showed the answer to the question, why Vic Fangio paid a lot of money? I don't know, because their defense has sucked all year. Outside the 3 or 4 games, Jalen Phillips has been healthy. Their defense hasn't been good. And the injury thing, I got it why it was 13-13. They had no Holland. Connor Williams, again, hurt again. No Armstead. Hunt, hurt again. Tyreek Hill got hurt. Okay, so you're going to be in a dogfight. Fine. But then you got up 14 with 4.5 minutes
Should
left.
be breezing with Vic Fangio, the big acquisition of the offseason.
What I don't understand is all he talked about when he came over was how he's great at blitzes. They never blitz.
No.
Never blitz. So like, what was he great at then? Like, I don't get it.
Counting Mississippi's, I think, would be the thing.
Yeah, injuries happen. Okay, they had way too much talent to not be able to overcome the injuries with 4.5 minutes left. Like, come on, man. Javon Holland's that important? Fuck. The middle of the field was wide open the entire game. Javon Holland
was getting away with murder also because the officials are about as inconsistent as you can possibly be when it comes to holding and pass interference. But that being said, I mean, it seemed like they were letting it go similarly for both teams. Howard seemed to have his hands all over receivers and maybe got there a little bit quickly. But all in all, it seemed like they were targeting this guy. During the ball game, but with Will Levis, who was about as suspect as you could get coming into the contest, and then he throws that hideous pick six to a defensive lineman early in the game, and they essentially, with the muff punt and the fumble deep in their own end, handed the Dolphins 21 points or close to it. I mean, they gave them directly 7, and the other 2 were short drives that ended up in touchdowns. So there's 21 of your 27, Lubie. Had a field goal blocked, the Miami Dolphins, a field goal attempt blocked, and then only managed offensively, essentially, 2 field goals in a ballgame that they generated completely on their own without a giant assist from the Tennessee Titans. In fact, if you saw the interview, did you catch the interview with Vrabel after the first quarter, the obligatory sideline interview with the coach who doesn't want to have anything to do with the questions that he's being asked? And he looked depressed after the first quarter. I think it was Laura Rutledge who was doing the interviews with ESPN. And, she asked him a couple of innocuous questions, put them as gently and phrasing them as positively as you possibly could. And he just looked and said, you know what? Right now we suck. We're not doing anything well. And then to win that game in that fashion, I mean, this was one of those giant questions with the Finns. Could they beat a good team? And you thought that they were just going to roll over the Tennessee Titans and then beat the Jets next week, set themselves up for that 3-game stretch at the end of the season where they have to face, Dallas, Buffalo, and the Baltimore Ravens, not necessarily in that order. And they end up blowing a cupcake here. Tua, after the ball game, I've come to really like Tua. He doesn't seem to see this as a matter of life and death, but can you shrug that one away in Joe Philbin-like fashion?
Nope.
And just say, well, it's the NFL and these things happen. I'm not sure that that's a good approach on that one.
He was horrendous. I'm sorry. You couldn't get one fucking first down? Dude, you couldn't get what? Like, what? Like, I'm actually livid because it's not that they lost the game. It's they actually had it set up perfect for the first time in my life, even the Marino years. It's set up perfect. Chiefs lost. The Jaguars are fucking struggling. The Ravens look
they were at least vulnerable in that game.
Vulnerable. That's it. The Ravens look vulnerable. You have, even though the Bills, the Bills beat the Chiefs, but the Bills aren't they're not good. They have a lot of issues. It sets up perfect for you. Like, you win that game. I don't care how you win it. They could have struggled in one. I don't give a shit. Just you win the game, and it looks perfect. My problem is they keep struggling with these injuries. Okay, well, the guys who are injured are going to always be injured. Connor Williams is going to be hurt. He's now made that clear. No matter how good he looks, he's going to be
and he came out and they brought in, what is it, Eichenberg? They put him at center, and immediately there was a fumble on a bad exchange when the Dolphins were driving for a score. We're sitting there pretty much assured of, in field goal range, unless they get, something absurd happens like the block. But they were definitely in a position to score 7 and guaranteed 3 pretty much. And therein lies the difference in a ball game. A fumbled exchange with the center. Tua never picked up the ball, and it ended up on the ground, and Tennessee recovered. So, I mean, just laced with mistakes, the Miami Dolphins, but also raising, I don't know, do you shrug that off? I mean, sometimes you'll see a horse run a bad race, Lubie, or a fighter have a bad fight, and you just put a line through it. Tennis player has an awful match, but he's one of the top guys. He's going to bounce back, or she's going to bounce back. Basketball teams have bad games. Guys, end up looking awful, like Jimmy Butler did the other night in that loss to the Cavaliers. You figure that they're going to bounce back. You can put a line through it, as they say at the track, and just ignore the last result. But was this a game that raised more questions than it answered? That at a stage of the season where you really don't want to be on shaky turf, let's say. This was one I kept thinking about Tony Segreto the entire time. Our good friend Tony Segreto, where you look at the schedule and you start penciling in the wins and losses before the season starts. This was one, especially if you knew that Will Levis was going to be the quarterback. I don't know. Is he better than Ryan Tannehill? I'm not sure. But Tannehill seemed to have declined from a period where you actually thought he was a viable NFL quarterback, and the last couple of years hasn't been so great. I think Vrabel was happy to see what Will Levis could do. The first time he came in there, he looked great. Then regressed to the point where you were wondering if he was ever going to start again. And sure enough, they stuck with him. But for him to be outplaying Tua Tagovailoa, now there was some speculation there with you and the great Mike Mayo.
Well, not me,
Going
Mayo.
back and forth about now what happened? Tua was injured. I did not see that part of the game.
Mayo, when he ran to the 3 and he got rocked on one of their field goal drives because Mike McDaniel, it took him to the end of the game to decide to run. What's so funny is the 2 drives he ran it inside the 10, they scored both times easily.
What's funny too is he has Mostert averaging about 5 yards a carry, like he was Mercury Morris, and Achan is averaging 10 yards a carry coming into this game. He had 56 carries for like 582 yards. Pretty incredible. And yet you don't want to run the football. And that's pretty wild. I understand you have all of these receivers and you have Tua throwing a rock like he was going to win the MVP. But there goes the MVP for Tua, huh?
Yes.
That game.
When Tua ran and he got hit at like the 3, they didn't do it the next. I guess did they have the ball 2 more times? I don't know. They had the 2 Jmmy touchdowns where he didn't have to do anything, and then they got the ball I think a couple times, and their offense did nothing. Mayo was attributing that to a concussion.
Well, he's inclined to extreme wild speculation. Yeah,
it was fine. Their offense looked like shit all night. Their offense, all night was even when they moved the ball, they couldn't get in the end zone. You just said it. They didn't get 1 touchdown on their own. They got 2 touchdowns on ridiculously bad plays by the Titans.
Well, one was directly given to the Miami Dolphins as you had Levis throw the ball directly into the chest of a defensive lineman. And the other 2, extremely short fields. The muff punt was an atrocity for the guy to make an attempt to try and catch that as the ball's over his head after it bounces. Such ugliness. And then the fumble deep in their own territory led to a very short drive that resulted in a touchdown. So, yeah, it was... It was a shocker. It was almost for me, I have to admit, I turned away from the game thinking that this thing was under wraps and I fell asleep. And then I wake up to the highlights and I'm like, what? They lost? You got to be kidding me.
It was 4.5 minutes, and I was like, I should be able to go to, because the game was late as fuck because it took forever.
Yes.
And I was like, I was like, I probably could go to bed now, but I'm like, let me just watch it just to see how it ends.
Miracle at the Meadowlands.
And I stayed up just to be safe. And they kept saying, they're like, well, it's pretty much, the Titans are going to go to 0-7 unless some crazy shit happens. And I was like, yeah, the Dolphins should win, but I don't think it's going to be easy. Like, the defense hasn't played well the entire night. And it happened again. Like, Ogba and Sealer, Wilkins, Chubb make a lot of money. Like, and I understand Phillips is important, but that's 4 guys right there. You couldn't get 1 stand. You couldn't get 1 stand versus a rookie quarterback. Like, he wasn't touched the last 2 drives. And like Orlovsky's like, well, they're going to get easy catches. Why? Like, why do the defense do it? Like, it wasn't an official prevent. They rushed 4, but like, why do defenses go into the shell? Well, as long as it takes some time, it didn't. Like, teams have shown you that.
They're giving up 36-yard plays. To DeAndre Hopkins.
Well, that was the last touchdown. The second last one. The second last one was the game for me because you could have ended the game there. Why even let them get that touchdown? Like, they were getting 8 to 10 yard chunks. Okay, so that means they don't have to use timeouts. That means they don't even have to worry about the sidelines. Like, why? I don't understand why defenses were pretty aggressive all game going to these shells. And
dumbest thing you could do.
You don't want to give up a big play. You don't want to give up a big play. I get it. But you did. The amount of time they would have scored with a big play was the same. They scored in a minute and a half. And a minute and a half, they went down the field and scored a touchdown. Like, what are you doing?
With supposedly inept offense also.
Yeah.
If you stop Derrick Henry, you stop Tennessee for the most part. All right. This is good because we had a schedule change, a little juxtaposition. We were going to talk to John yesterday. John Congemi, of course, brought to you by Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill with the Pigskin Playbook. And I was thinking, all right, John will come on. We'll review the NFL weekend. I don't know if he wants to talk about the Army-Navy game. And we'll have a nice preview of what we figure is going to be a victory party for the Miami Dolphins. Now you were there, John. How stunned was the crowd exiting the stadium yesterday?
It's it's funny, guys, and good morning. It's funny that, with about 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes left to go in the game, I usually head down to the field
Yes.
to do the post-game show, the fifth quarter show on WFOR4. And I'm going down and I'm hearing like weird sounds in the bowels of the
Yes.
stadium, right? You're not hearing a lot of cheers. You're not hearing a lot of eruptions from the hometown crowd. So I get to this monitor where I kind of watch the last 3 or 4 minutes of the game. And I watched in amazement that the Miami Dolphins had a game. They had a 27-13 lead. And I wrote all this down in the tunnel with 4:34 left to go in the game. And Tennessee scores 2 touchdowns in the final 2:40 of the game and a 2-point conversion.
Yes.
To win the game, Harold Landry looks like, the second coming of, I don't know, the greatest defender in the world.
Like they couldn't.
Yeah, he has three sacks. The Titans have 5 sacks on the day. And it was just crazy because, as you were saying, Lubie, the chunk yardage plays that were happening with Tennessee and D. Hopkins, gosh, DeAndre Hopkins there was no one around him in the last 4 or 5 minutes. And they willed themselves to a victory. But the Dolphins, I mean, the one thing you could say about Miami's team this year, they've been able to close out stuff when they've needed to. Like they did a great job. It was a tighter game than expected. They were able to keep the offense on the field, find a way to do it. And the other thing is the Dolphins have been the number one offense in red zone scoring the entire year. They've been coming away with touchdown after touchdown after touchdown. Well, you're 2 for 5 in the red zone, and those 2 are coming away, it seems like, with a couple short kicks and you get a blocked field goal as well in that game. So there were a lot of things that hadn't happened to Miami that happened to them. And you have to give credit where credit's due. That Will Levis is going to, you know how they're doing those ice tubs now that you get them at the house.
Yeah.
He's going to have to do one in the car. He's going to have to do one if he's sitting in a takeout line. Some of it was self-inflicted because he was looking for the initiating the contact. But
After contact.
He played an unbelievable game, for a rookie quarterback getting his 3rd win of the year.
That guy's built like a beast for a quarterback.
He is. Big kid.
Wow.
Big, strong.
Looks like a bodybuilder. It definitely went well muscled, and he was very, very intense. I mean, he went nuts after the game. I've had that experience. I've mentioned it a few times over the years, probably a couple of 100 times over the years, in reference, John, to the idea that the Miami crowds sometimes are overwhelmed and overtaken by New York-based fans, especially when the Giants are in town, which is a rarity.
Right.
And I was in the bowels of the stadium after making some announcements on the field one time, and I'm on my way up. And, you have to work your way up through all kinds of different things, trap doors. It's almost like you're in Deer Hunter there. And you finally get to the point where you can see what's going on. And I remember hearing just outrageously, I mean, the stadium's rocking. The fans are cheering. They're going nuts. And I thought, fuck, I missed a Dolphins touchdown here. So I have to catch up and see what happened. And it was the Giants that scored. And I thought, what the hell is going on out there? I mean, the crowd was very much in favor of the New York Giants at that time. It's interesting because you're not seeing the game, and yet you're feeling this vibe like something ugly is happening. And that's what transpired. So where does that leave us, John? I mean, this was one of those games that, you had penciled in as a win for sure. You were thinking, okay, let's just get everything in place and hope everybody's healthy as you go into that final 3-game stretch. You have the Jets coming up next week, which I don't know if they're resurrected from the grave, but they're certainly
they have some life now.
Yeah, more enthusiastic than they were with Wilson in the second half coming around. Although it's great. I mean, you talk about the scrutiny of the New York media. I don't know if this would have happened in Miami, but even after he rallied the team, Wilson, with this 30-point second half. Story today is no matter what happens the rest of the way, even if he looks great, they got to get rid of him.
Gone, yeah.
They got to get rid of him. That's got to be a good thing to wake up to. I mean, you experienced some of that when you were in the spotlight there, quarterbacking in the pros and at Pitt. That has to be rough to wake up to the morning paper and see something
Yeah,
like
pass
that.
the coffee. Oh, we have to move, honey. You know,
Yeah.
that's great. Yeah, where does it leave them? An old coach of mine in Canada once told me, you know, after I threw an interception and I came to the sidelines and I was so disappointed, you know, we're talking about it. He goes, listen, John, you got a lot of money in the bank with me. You just made a withdrawal. It's not a big deal. Move on. You know,
Yeah.
you got plenty of credibility left. And I think that's where the Miami Dolphins stand. They've built themselves up to have such a nice cushion in the AFC East that game meant a lot because it kind of let everybody back in the door a little bit closer, but it didn't give them the door wide open. Miami still controls what they need to control. If they can win the games they need to win, they need to beat the Jets. And then, you know, the Dallas Cowboy game could really go either way. They have to set their eyes on the AFC opponents, and that's Buffalo and most importantly, the Baltimore Ravens, because they're at the top of the AFC when you talk about home field advantage right now. So the Dolphins still have everything in place. Would have made it a lot easier last night. You get the victory, you cruise to a crown, and you may have it clinched before some of those games
next week because they would have been 11-3, and the Bills
yes
lose. The Bills, I think, could play a Cowboys.
They do.
Would have clinched it with 3 games left.
So you make it tougher, right, Lubie?
Yes.
Well, that's
my thing for you is, you know, the sport. You're not just a fan. You don't go high and low. When they've looked good in games, you've been like, yeah, okay, we'll see. They look bad. So the even temperament thing, I love that. I don't know how to do it. And I don't think I ever will, to be brutally honest. So that's why
There's nobody more even keel than John Congemi. Nobody.
He does it. He gets
calmer individual.
You should see me on the golf course. I got clubs flying everywhere.
I can't believe that. Yeah.
After watching last, it seems clear to me that when they have these injuries, 2 guys in particular, Connor Williams on the offensive line, Javon Holland on the defense. No matter who's been out there, if Holland's out there, it seems like it feels like those catches at the end of the game were Holland erasers. It feels like Holland would have been the guy, the minute someone caught it, hit them. It feels like that's what he does. And not having him, Elliott doesn't do that. Brandon Jones doesn't do that. Okay. On the offensive line, whenever Tua needs an extra second, it feels like Connor Williams has been the guy. The rest of the offensive line falls in line. We've seen the games that they've struggled on offense were definitively the games he wasn't there. It seems like those 2 guys are going to be hurt a lot. It just feels like, at least this year, that's sort of the thing. And that's my concern, is what your issue was last night doesn't feel like it's going away. Like Connor Williams feels like he's going to get hurt, and Javon Holland feels like he's going to get hurt. And I don't know, so far they haven't been able to recover from that.
You know, rumors have it that Connor Williams is not coming back.
Oh,
yeah, wow.
And I don't know if that's true or not, but if it is, you know, that slots everybody down, you know, up a peg, really. And, you know, you got to cross your fingers that Robert Hunt is going to be able to come back at right guard. And you're hoping that Teron Armstead's going to be able to pencil in at left tackle, because this team right now is suffering injuries that at the safety position, at the linebacker position, on the offensive line, that guys that are just playing special teams are now going to be asked to play the majority of snaps on either offense or defense. And now you've got new guys on special teams, and you hope that they can, you know, fill the roles the way that the guys that are starters now have played throughout most of the season. So my biggest concern, you cross your fingers if Connor Williams is able to bounce back. If he can't, that's going to move Liam Eichenberg into that starting center role. Now, I watched him a lot last night. He didn't play poorly at all. I thought he did a pretty good job, but it stresses an offense.
Yes.
Because look what happened when you erase Tyreek Hill from the offense for 2.5 quarters.
Yep.
You know, that umbrella defense that Belichick played against the Dolphins in week 3 or 4, whatever that was, maybe week 2, kind of went to the Raiders and McDaniel's kind of influence on it, and now to Vrabel's influence on it. So that's been the most effective remedy, I guess, to slow down the Dolphins. They didn't give them a whole lot of shot plays. You didn't see a lot of those chunk yardage plays last night. You saw the 20 yarders, a lot of 11, a lot of 17 to Tyreek and Jalen Waddle, but you didn't see the 78-yard touchdown. You didn't see the run after catch a lot. because that umbrella defense seems to, we're going to give you stuff, but you're going to have to earn it. And when you don't have your offensive line in, it also makes Tua hold the football and move from his spot.
Yep.
And you see when you can do that to him, he was a little bit more erratic with the football. He kind of, took some sacks or had to scramble to get out of some sacks and just throw the football away. Those are the types of things you hadn't seen on regularity against the Miami Dolphins offense. And when you look at the teams that did it, and you hate to say it, but it's true, it had the Belichick kind of influence where we're going to umbrella you. We're going to try to make some plays on the football, but we are not going to give the one that's going over the top or the one that's going to go across the middle and out the other side for, an 80-yard touchdown.
John Congemi, guesting with us, the Pigskin Playbook, usually every Monday here, brought to you by Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill, mile marker 104, Overseas Highway in Key Largo, in a great spot. Any news on that, John, in terms of renovations completed?
The sports bar is up and going.
Nice.
The only thing that's down is kind of where the restaurant is. So the sports bar is good. The tiki bar, people are out there enjoying it. So they're almost where they need to be, probably just after the new year, but they're up and running right now.
Okay, good. That's always good news because naturally the next question would be, have we heard from Tommy Fox? Yeah. Which congratulations are in order for you and your St. Thomas Aquinas.
Yeah, how about
alumni,
that? 5 in a row.
Is that 5 straight championships?
5 straight, 15 in total.
It was not easy, though.
No,
who did they play?
Game.
Homestead? They played.
They did.
A local
team.
Right?
That Homestead quarterback and wide receiver, I don't know their names, but I think it was number 3 and number 2. It was unbelievable how they kept coming back, and what a great game. And then the last game, I think it was Lakeland and who else? Venice and Lakeland ended up pulling it out. So Columbus got a state championship down in Miami. So congratulations to those guys as well.
Yeah, I think it was 3 local teams ended up with state championships.
I think just rolled right through. Like that team was freaking insane.
Some pretty good talent here. Yeah. Maybe Manny Diaz comes back now that he's at Duke and tries to raid the local coffers here for some of that talent. Although, and that was a strange hire that we never really touched on. But speaking of coaches, Lubie naturally, he's had his questions about Mike McDaniel. I'm thinking about that quote as you were speaking about what happened there and the umbrella defenses in this. And I saw that first quarter interview with Mike Vrabel, the in-game interview, where he just looked, like he was resigned to taking a beating in the ball game. And it's like he can take his and beat you. And McDaniel has better talent and has all the advantages. Vic Fangio is supposed to be this genius defensive coordinator. And you would have to say that, in essence, they got out coached in that game by Mike Vrabel and his staff. That's a 4-8 shitty Tennessee team that was going nowhere and had a quarterback that had more than his share of struggles going into the game. Whereas, we were thinking these people are crazy that are talking about Dak Prescott as the MVP. We have him right here in our backyard in Tua Tagovailoa.
Well, when you think about how the game played out, I thought it was lost in the red zone opportunities. And I'm not so sure why the Miami Dolphins didn't run the football when they got inside the 5-yard line. It seemed like
there you go, Lubie.
All they wanted to do was get back and throw.
Yeah.
And basically the Dolphins were running at will. It wasn't like they were stymied at any point. Mostert was hitting the line of scrimmage at top speed and so was the Chan. Yeah. And I think Mostert had 98 yards on like 21 carries. Chan was in the 70s somewhere. So I think the Dolphins had 158 yards running the football. And you're going to tell me it's 1st and goal with the 5, and you're not going to give those guys 2 touches out of 3, maybe?
Mostert leads the league in touchdowns, right? He set a franchise record. He has more touchdowns than Zonk, I think, at this point. And I didn't realize he was 3rd in the league in rushing also. And Achan had 56 rushes, I think, for 500 and some odd number of yards, like almost 10 yards a carry. So can you be too smart, John? What do you think as a head coach? This is one of Lubie's contentions. And,
I'm sure they ran the plays that they repped during the week that they felt like was going to give them the best chance to score. But at some point, you got to go with your gut and you go, man, I'm watching the same game you're watching. Yeah. We're running the football. Let's go ahead and pound it at these guys. We're getting some surge. when we need to run the football, let's dial up our 3 best runs and try it one time, because the first couple times you're down there and the ball's not coming out, you throw a fade route, you get rattled kind of with pressure, you get a sack fumble, you get a center quarterback exchange that ends up on the ground. So there were a lot of issues that the Dolphins had against the Tennessee Titans they haven't had all year. So Connor Williams goes out, you have the quarterback center exchange. You throw the ball, and you lean on the passing game down in the red zone, you either have incompletions or sacks. And the only success they had was when Mostert got touches, and he was able to find, the end zone. So maybe you can overthink it a touch, but going into the game, their game plan definitely was throwing the football in the red zone compared to leaning on the run.
Story was pretty much with Fangio that looked like the defense was coming around. And this acquisition in the offseason of the most sought-after defensive coordinator in the game was starting to really manifest itself into a defense that you thought, hey, even if the offense is having an off day, these guys are going to be fine, especially against a slug team, and a team that you thought was going to be a much more one-dimensional. You're thinking if you stuff Derrick Henry, isn't that always the MO against Tennessee?
He averaged 2 yards per carry.
Right. He was
going
nowhere.
Not a factor, but in the red zone, he got his touches.
Yes.
They went wildcat, and they got in the end zone. And then at the end, that ball's supposed to go between the tackles. He sees a flash. I think it was defensive end or maybe a linebacker came in. He steps around it and finds the end zone, on the perimeter. So they gave the ball to their guy when it mattered most. But for the majority of the evening, I felt bad for him. He was getting the tar beat out of him.
Yeah.
And he's a big man.
Yeah, so, I mean, if they're going to take that element away from them and rely on Will Levis, you would have to think, and Lubie keeps screaming about this.
Dolphins.
Yeah, I mean, but Fangio wasn't he known to have a reputation to be very aggressive and throwing a ton of blitzes? And, he mixed it up extremely well. Always was outfoxing whoever he was going against in terms of the offensive coordinator that he was opposing. You're not really seeing that. I mean, you alluded to this earlier in the season, one of the games, I forget which one it was, where, he started blitzing at the end. He got a couple of big plays against
the Chargers game. The Chargers game was what I thought last night would be. They didn't do shit all game.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was the first game of the season.
3 minutes of the game, they pounded.
And he looked like garbage. And I'm like, okay, do that now. You screwed around all game. Do it now. And
the defense, to their credit, that's 3 weeks in a row with a defensive score.
Yes.
Yes. Also a team record now, I think.
Right. So you get 2 pick sixes by Van Ginkel and, of all players, Zach Sealer, like a 5-yard interception return, which
looked
was
like
a great
Jason
play.
Taylor. Yes.
Yeah. It was a tremendous play. So, the Tennessee Titans out totaled the Dolphins, in total offense. I think they were over 400 yards.
Yes, they were.
But it almost didn't give you the feel of it, because you tell me, guys, if the Dolphins end up winning that game after the pick six by Sealer, the bad fumble, on the pitch play by Henry where they get the ball, the horrendous muffed punt that give the Dolphins a 12-yard scoring drive, a 7-yard scoring drive after the Henry fumble, you're kind of walking away going, yeah, we didn't play our best. The offense, Tyreek was out. Our offensive line was banged up. Defense gave up a lot of yards, but they didn't do anything for the majority of the game that you felt like the defense is playing just awful. They were right on the cusp of making a couple of plays, but at the end of the game, that's where it kind of frustrated you because it looked too easy.
Yes.
The defense, to your point, Lubie and Jeff, like they didn't put the pressure in the pocket and put the onus on X and Ramsey to get press man coverage, play the safeties deep, make the time element in the pocket shorter, and make them make some plays under duress where guys were running free. And I don't know if some of it was a busted coverage in terms of Ramsey didn't carry.
Daniel said, McDaniel, look, I'll give him credit. He said the two things that, not that I wanted him to hear, but that he said, they asked him about the running. And he said, yeah, he's like, I had plays I thought would work. They didn't work. That's on me. Which, look, to his credit, in the same game, the next 2 times he ran the living shit out of it, and they scored easy. So it actually frustrates me more, but at least he's willing in the game to grow,
adjust.
Whatever, fine. And he also said they had miscommunication in the secondary. First of all, don't you take a goddamn fucking timeout? Like, you weren't saving your timeouts. You had 1 timeout left on the last drive.
Did you say that on Channel 4 last night after the game?
You know what? They cut the commercial.
But if you're clearly seeing, okay, they looked lost. Like Jalen Ramsey a couple of times looked around like, dude, where were you?
Well, that's the play I was thinking about. They showed a replay from the end zone cut or the defensive side. Jalen Ramsey's running with Hopkins across the middle, and then he stops for maybe a second, and then he continues on. But that second gave 10 yards of a window where he's trailing the receiver that, what did he go for? 7 catches for 124 yards.
I'm not trying to hate. I know Hopkins has lots of talent, but he's been like a malcontent the last 3 years. Like, he hasn't done anything in literally 3 years. Like, it was really weird to see him go off at the end of the, like, he didn't do anything all game, to be brutally honest.
Well, even when he had some contested chances, like with X battling down inside like the red zone, on the long pass, they're trying to drag each other down. He catches it almost with one hand going to the ground. Yeah. And then he had another catch where I don't know how he gets out of a tackle, gets out of bounds, saves a timeout, and kept the drive alive. So he had some remarkable plays for a guy that I forgot was on the Tennessee Titans.
I'm looking at the line for next week here.
Jets got to be what?
Jets are getting 11 and a hook right now from the Dolphins. 11 and a hook.
I mean,
yeah, these are the things that we have to take into consideration. As much as we want to fire off, venomous diatribes against the coaching staff. I mean, that's a question though with Mike McDaniel. Can you be too smart for your own good? And you wonder about that because it seems like we've been saying that. Many, many times, even after wins, like you're running the ball and it's working. So why not, emphasize that a little bit more, if nothing else, and go away from your temptation to always want to throw the ball to this nice, wild complement of receivers that you have.
Well, they do have a complement of receivers, and they do have a dynamic offense with a lot of motions and a lot of formations. But did you guys notice when Tyreek Hill was out of the game? Guys didn't know where to line up. Yep. Guys didn't know who
looked
was
like
going
Kadarius Toney. Yeah.
It was kind of like not a panic mode, but they weren't used to having him in the game. And what a valuable asset he is, because he puts the fear of God in opposing defenses. And I thought that gave Tennessee some confidence to say, well, who's going to replace him? Nobody. You're still going to have Waddle you have to contend with. And I thought Wilson did a nice job. On the chances that he had, but there wasn't that fear that, man, here comes that big play. Or you didn't see a lot of run after catch. It was catch and fall down, or it was catch and get hit, or catch and get tackled. And the offense looked disjointed a little bit, and it looked not confused, but who was playing the role? Was it Berrios? Was it Waddle? Was it Wilson? No one really kind of knew how to line up because he's been a constant all year. And I think that's why the offensive line was able to survive, because they've had so many injuries up front that they're used to that. I don't think I think it shocked the Dolphins offensively that they didn't have number 10 in the lineup.
I love that he pulled a Willis Reed later on in the ball game. Comes running out of the tunnel there, flexes and says, "I'm good to go." And apparently he had a text exchange with his wife. And she said, "You better get back in the fucking game." And that was his incentive to get back out there. All right, we're going to come back with more with John Congemi. A couple of other things we'll touch on around the NFL. There was another game last night. The Tommy DeVito sensation in New York City continues. Did you see the guy? I don't know if
there
that
was so much
member
kissing
of his family
in the stands.
Yeah,
I didn't know what to do. I was going to turn around and hug Mike Cunha next to me.
I mean, he had one guy in his contingent there. It looked like family members that was straight off the pages of Crime Magazine. There, it looked like a made member of the Gambino crime family. You have to love this, and they're digging it in New York. Can you imagine? It's so funny to think that here's a team that won a game with a non consequential quarterback that was on their roster, inconsequential guy, and now he's become the biggest story in New York City. I mean, Aaron Judge could walk naked through Times Square, and all people would be talking about would be, "Oh man, I saw Tommy DeVito at the Italian deli," and it was great. And they're like 5-8, and they're celebrating, and we're sitting here grousing about falling to 9-4. But it was very unfortunate, and I think it showed some things that you really didn't want to necessarily feel like you had to address about the Dolphins' 3 losses to the winning teams, the only winning teams that they had played this year. They lost all 3 of those games, and I'm not sure that this didn't add some substance to the argument that you get this all the time, and the comeback is always, John. Well, you got to play the teams that are on your schedule. That's all you can do. But there is some question about the substance behind the quality of the competition that they rolled over, and they weren't able to roll over this bad Tennessee team. All right, we're going to come back with more with John Congemi. Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill, and so you're saying it's a couple of weeks away from fully.
I think
now,
so.
Are they serving food at the Tiki Bar?
They
can
are.
you still go down there and eat?
They are. You can get delicious food, first-class service, and great water, the Bayside views.
Yeah.
And I think you can still hang out at the Tiki Bar outside. I think just the main restaurant is still under renovation, but I think they're about up to about 75%, I'd say. But that 75% sometimes is better than anybody else in the Keys. The way that you kind of just get there and you get relaxed and get your favorite drink and your beverage of choice and get first class service and food. So Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill is the way to go. Dominic and Amanda and Larry do such a great job down there. It's a great spot just to kind of kick back and put the world behind you and have a great time.
I guess this would be a Keys approach. Dominic and Larry Calvano, are they inclined to just go ahead and play with the band on Sundays as the sun is setting over the bay, in spite of all the stress of these renovations?
I don't think anything stops that. I think that's unstoppable. It's one thing that's unstoppable about Jimmy Johnson's is those guys finding the stage on the weekend.
Who do you go to for permitting in the Keys? Some fishermen. It's got to be a lot easier than getting a permit and to do anything.
You're not going to be able to get that permit today because Tom's out fishing. He'll be back.
Yeah, he's catching permit. That's
yeah.
I'll give you your permit. Here you go, fry it up. All right, hey, so we're looking forward to that, and we still have to get Mike Mayo down there. And he's going to. I don't want to use a disparaging word, but he's going to have something negative to say. That's just the way he rolls. He could be with the top chefs in the world, and he would still say, "You know what? The cream sauce could use a little bit more salt." You're like, okay, but we'll have a lot of fun when we get down there, and be a pleasure because everybody can use that kind of escape, even if it's only for the afternoon, which it isn't that far of a pop, really, from Broward or Dade County. You often go round trip in the same day.
Yeah, absolutely. From Broward County, it's probably an hour and 15. So it's an hour. Depending if you're where you're at in Broward County. So, I often go down and have a couple drinks, have a nice meal, hang out for a little while, and maybe come back that night.
It's kind of like traveling in that show, The Lost World, right? Where you're going through like generations of time. And, you get into Dade County and you feel like, you crossed over into another environment, and then bingo. All of a sudden, you're in the Keys, and you feel like you left the face of the earth and found utopia. It's absolutely fantastic. All right, Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill. That's mile marker 104, the Overseas Highway in Key Largo, a great spot. We'll take a look at some of the other things that happen around the National Football League with the great John Congemi. The Pigskin Playbook continues here on the Defo Show with one Mike Lubie. It's a you have calmed down, Lubie. You have almost been like a dilaudid drip for Lubie on the show.
Well, I was so scared for Lubie after the Florida State.
Oh my God!
Last night didn't feel much different. Actually, that was very disappointing.
That's just known as the fucking now.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And a big picture of Nick should be associated with it. I think if I was a little more adept at creating things online, I would put that up there. The fucking. All right, thanks, John. We'll come back with more in just a moment. Now that. It's very nice of you to calm down, Lubie. It's 8:46.
Folks, Tony Segreto here. Let me ask you a question. What do you look for when you go out to eat? Good food, obviously. Friendly atmosphere, not too loud, but good energy, reasonable prices, and a place where you feel comfortable. All those ingredients, no pun meant there, are hard to find unless you're talking about the Texas Roadhouse. You see, they encompass all of those attributes. Really, really good food, amazing atmosphere, good for a family, good for a date, or just a night out for yourself, and prices that will make you extremely happy. Their ribs unmatched, steaks hand cut every day. Everything, and I mean everything, is made on site, including their incredible bread. It's the one day, folks, that you can forget about low-carb diets. Trust me when I tell you, Texas Roadhouse, your restaurant, your destination when you say, where should we go and eat tonight?
From the newly renovated sports bar to the beautiful bayside views captured at the Tiki Bar, Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill has it all. Located at mile marker 104, the Big Chill also offers waterfront dining while experiencing breathtaking sunset views of the Florida Keys. It's simply the hottest spot in the Keys to cool off. That's Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill at mile marker 104 in Key Largo. For more information, call today at 305-453-9066.
He followed in the footsteps of the great Dan Marino and brought Pittsburgh to heights not seen since the great Tony Dorsett ran the ball to Panthers' glory. He made the CFL fans forget about Flutie and Theismann and Warren Moon. As a football analyst, he's been compared with D-Row and Madden. And even more importantly, he survived the Joe Philbin era as a member of the broadcast team, the Finsiders. We welcome to the program the great John Congemi. Made a dynamite debut, as alluded to in the opening there, and came right back with a strong follow-up. And every Monday, 9 o'clock, we go Dateline Dolphins with John Congemi. Jonathan, how are you, my friend?
I am doing terrific, Defo. I think the most impressive thing about that open was me surviving the Philbin era. I thought that was
The only way to get your morning started is with Defo, joined by Lubie, right here on The Defo Show.
My math isn't as good as it used to be, and I have trouble calculating this anyway, which is what was the money line payoff in odds on the Tennessee Titans last night? And how little faith would you have had in cashing that ticket if you were watching that game with 4 minutes to go? But I mean, a money line parlay on the two dogs last night. The Giants, I guess, were plus 235. They were 6.5 point. I think they might have gone off 5.5 point underdogs. The money started to come in on the New York Giants, which I don't know, John. I mean, you followed this story, the Tommy DeVito story. I get a lot of it because of my New York Post. And they don't have the result of the game because they published this thing long before that game would have been over, or go to bed, whatever, with the paper. But they have about 6 pages of Tommy DeVito fanfare among the 15, 16 or so pages of the sports section. They're going crazy for this guy. And yet, I mean, you have to respect this because, the Giants want to run the football.
Right.
Teams, you would be able to speak to this. I mean, I don't know if you've been on a team like that. St. Thomas certainly was never in this situation. I don't know about Pittsburgh when you were there, where you're having a shitty season. I mean, so you're really, the incentives. There might be, I guess, with everybody 6 and 7 still eligible for the playoffs, and teams are even like, I don't know, 5 and 8, and they still have some kind of a shot to make the postseason. I mean, how do you incentivize yourself to go out there and now you're on your third quarterback, and yet they're riding this like they were picking up a wave and just catching a perfect a wave in Hawaii somewhere. I mean, and surfing on into the shore with this Tommy DeVito story, and yet he's been very efficient. I mean, he's only thrown 1 pick, which usually the backup quarterback comes in and it's helter-skelter time, and you're thinking the guy's going to be a pick machine, but he's been pretty efficient. I mean, do you think this guy has a legitimate chance to be an NFL starter for any sustained period of time based on what you've seen?
I mean, why not? I mean, look at the story that Brock Purdy is putting on as the last guy, picked in the draft. You would think he would have been a surefire first rounder if you looked at the San Francisco 49ers today compared to a year and a half ago, right? So
Sure.
Tommy DeVito is one of those guys that
Tommy DeVito.
It's amazing that you can tell that his teammates really respect him, and they've seen flashes of that at practice, right? So you always get somebody that's on the team that you watch practice, and he practices so well, and he gives you everything he's got, and he's so consistent, and he's a good teammate, and those types of things galvanize a football team. Those types of things, especially if you bring it to Sundays and you have some success, man, you start propping this guy up, saying we got to elevate our game. If this guy, nobody knew him a month ago, and now he's the toast of New York City, and he's one of the guys that everyone's talking about in the National Football League on a losing team.
Yeah,
and a team that's a 5-win team maybe.
He's living at home with his mother.
Yeah, I just think
and
that
dad. I mean, it's
think
not
that
like he's there taking care of her. I mean,
Right.
this guy's living at home eating chicken cutlets all day. They're making a big deal out of it. It's great.
Perfect. Red or white sauce tonight, Tommy? Yeah, I'll do anything, Ma. It's great.
He doesn't look like the prototype by any stretch of the imagination. I
No,
mean,
but
he
he's
looks more
getting
like
it.
Danny DeVito. He does.
He's getting it done, man.
Yeah.
Boy, he's playing
It's fun.
so well, and it's fun to watch.
Yeah.
And it's fun to see stories like that. But the most important thing that you notice is now other guys are holding themselves accountable. That defense is playing better. Saquon's getting the extra yard to stay on the field for the offense. Everybody's got attention to detail. And when you're thrusted into a position where that you better elevate your game to make it easier on that guy to make the transition from not playing, nobody knows him, to now being one of the focal points, not only of your team, but every week national media is talking about this guy. So
yeah. I
it
mean,
helps
the way you
the
described
entire
it.
team.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, he's a galvanizing force on a team that would have every reason to just kind of throw in the towel and
Right.
say, hey, yeah, we're not going anywhere. So let me pad my stats and see what can happen next year because I want to get the bleep out of here. All right, the Kadarius Toney play. And I guess Mahomes now has come to his senses, and he's a guy. Even if you didn't like, you have to respect what this guy's all about. I think Mahomes. He seems like the kind of guy that would be the face of the National Football League, and he's always been very gracious in interviews and things like that, humble in press conferences. I mean, if that's just all like a Tiger Woods front, I would be surprised. He seems to be a genuine guy. Goes nuts after that play. I don't know if you were watching the Kansas City Bills game, but
I saw it.
But I mean, there's no way. I mean, the guy is like 2 yards off sides. We were saying yesterday that Tony was further off sides than Rudy was in the movie when he made that play. There's no. I mean, if the guy doesn't throw the flag there, then why even have officials on the field? To take a look at these kind of things.
What I don't understand about the whole play is every play, receivers are looking down the line at this.
Yes.
Yeah.
The linesman.
How do you not
They're
see the
going
ball?
like, "Am I good?" It's like the official is going to either give you the thumbs up, or he's going to say, "Back up." Now I don't know if Kadarius Toney ever looked that way.
He didn't, based on what I saw.
No, he never did. It was
he was straight ahead the whole time.
Normally, that linesman would tell a coach on the sidelines.
Oh yeah, okay.
that guy's offsides. Give him the benefit of the doubt, the heads up to say, "Hey, Tony, get back." Somebody get his attention to back up.
So
And I think
yeah.
What's
sorry.
that? No, I was going to say what I also think happened that I'd have to watch the game film again to see. Sometimes centers, when the ball is spotted by the official, sometimes the centers will pick up the ball and move it into a position where they can snap it.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes the officials will come in and re-spot it and tell the center, "Hey, you can't move it a whole yard." But I wouldn't say this is 50-50, but maybe 60-40, 70-30, that center, what is it, Humphreys? I can't remember the kid's name.
I don't recall seeing
picks up the ball moves
like
it a touch, and Tony had already set himself prior to him moving that a half yard.
Although everybody else was behind the ball. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I want to say that didn't happen. From what I noticed, you might be onto something there with that. But Tony. I mean, Tony just he's been known to be. I mean, this was a guy that they're loving it in New York because Tony was such a bust there for that free agent money they paid him.
Yeah.
And they couldn't wait to get rid of this guy. I think what did he have? Like one catch in 5 years. It was insane how poorly he was performing for definitely compared to the amount of money he was being paid for no productivity. And they were saying he was the kind of guy that like falls asleep at meetings and just really is detached from what's going on. And which is the kind of look that he had, that horror that you saw written across his face as he realized he just we went from hero to goat in like a split second, right? He scores the touchdown. He's doing the Deion Sanders kind of prance into the end zone. And a second later, he looks like the biggest fool on the face of the earth.
Yeah, he couldn't. He wasn't going to leave the sidelines because he was told that you're not going back in.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
now, Lubie, kind of bristles whenever I use this word, but and we did confirm that it is a word, explosivity. The Chiefs, though, I mean, all season long, they're just not as explosive a unit as they've been in the past. People keep waiting for that to happen, but it doesn't seem to be happening at any
Most
time.
of their explosive plays are left on the ground because they've had so many drops.
A lot of drops.
Yeah.
I mean, the plays are there, and guys haven't made plays. I mean, shoot, the greatest throw of the weekend might have been Kelsey to Tony,
Yes.
going away from him, with two defenders in his face. I mean, that was an explosive play, and it comes back because of a penalty. So I think the Chiefs have been their own worst enemies by drops, mistakes, penalties, all those types of things. But the drops are primarily why you haven't seen those guys, run after catch or the opportunities to keep drives alive because they've left the football on the ground.
Dallas looking good. San Francisco looking good. It appears those two are maybe a notch above the Eagles at this stage of the season. Maybe some of that stuff that was happening with Jalen Hurts being supposedly, if not qualified as injured, certainly hurting.
And what happened to Detroit?
Detroit, wow. I mean, a couple of really ugly losses.
Yeah.
And, I was just thinking, Lubie's, this is one of his beefs. And I always look at this too, like the mark of a good quarterback. And and I and Lubie have talked about this before. I mean, you have to be able to get those 2 first downs that you need sometimes, under whatever circumstances, play call notwithstanding, going away from the run or whatever. But when you're trying to grind down the clock at the end of a ball game, and you don't necessarily need to score, but you just need to make sure that the other team doesn't have a chance to. You have to be able to get those first downs. And I was watching Jared Goff, and he was closing out a game, and he comes up with 2 miraculous short throws. And you're saying, wow, okay, that's the mark of a veteran, skilled quarterback that's coming through in the spot. And we didn't see that from Tua in this ball game at all.
2 drives last night that they need. They got 1 first down. The game's pretty much over if they'd gotten a first down the second last drive.
You have to clinch sometimes on a smaller level. I mean, you don't necessarily need to make some spectacular play. But
last drive, they had 2 minutes and just needed a field goal.
Right.
Will Levis had just marked twice and got touchdowns. They just needed 1 field goal in 2 minutes. And they couldn't do it. It was sort of disconcerting to me.
It was odd. It was definitely odd the way the game transpired. Maybe sometimes the human element comes in. Every fan I looked at was heading for the doors. The game's over, right?
Yeah. Well, what's the period of time that you're allowed to grouse about this? I mean,
24 hours.
Is it 24, 48, all the way to the Jet game?
24-hour rule. Yeah, 24.
Very good. All right. And how much, does that change your focus at all in terms of your thoughts about this upcoming game against the Jets?
Well, I think you have to look at the Jets. I don't think the Dolphins are going to lay an egg. I really don't. Now, injuries could play a part in them slowing down a little bit, depending on how Tyreek Hill bounces back, if Connor Williams is going to be available, if Robert Hunt's going to be available, if Javon Holland's going to be available. Elliott was injured in that game as well with the ribcage injury. He played, but he's hurting. I might be missing 1 or 2 guys. Armstead, if I didn't say him, but there's a lot of missing.
He's a given
pieces.
On the injury list.
That could be there. Yeah. That brings the Jets closer because the Jets have a little confidence now, and they know that over the past years they've gotten Miami 1 time. Yeah. It hasn't been a sweep, really.
Yep.
And they've had it. They have a chance to come down and ruin AFC East rivals' season, basically, if they can make this game a game and get it into the 4th quarter. So, I think it brings more interest and more eyeballs to the game than it would have if the Dolphins had beat Tennessee 45-10. Yep. You wish that would have happened. The Dolphins would be sitting pretty. but it didn't. And I think this game's going to get more attention now than it was going to.
Now, are you still broadcasting outside the stadium somewhere before
No.
the game?
No,
Okay.
just on the field for pregame and postgame.
All right. Well, on your way in, maybe you can make an observation for us and over under number of Altoon jerseys where the two O's are stretched, about almost a foot apart by now because the guy's put on 70 pounds since since he first joined the thing. Yeah, that was always one of my favorite things to try to track. I may be too old now. I mean, you probably don't see a lot of Altoon. You see some Namath.
No, you don't see
I remember being very surprised to see like brand new Jay Fiedler Jet jerseys when he was first with the Jets after being here with the Miami Dolphins, and you thought that was a rarity. I guess what would be the most common Jet jersey? Corbett, used to be a big one. Who else? I mean,
Gastineau. How about a
Gastineau jerseys? You see a lot of that, no doubt. I don't know.
Klecko, maybe. Klepko, a couple of Kleckos.
Couple of Kleckos. That'd be interesting. All right, well, that should be a lot of fun. You have a so-called AFC Eastern rivalry game coming up, and the Dolphins trying to shake off what was an extremely ugly and improbable loss. Talk about the miracle at the Meadowlands, my friend. That was a shocker to see that end result. Especially, I mean, you're thinking, why is this guy going for 2 points here? It made little sense.
Listen, at 27-13 with under 5 minutes left to go, I don't know. I'm pushing all the chips to the middle of the table going, there's no way this is going to happen.
Yeah, I'm thinking, look, wouldn't you want to put yourself in a position to at least have a chance to tie the game? Whereas, you're going to then be forced to make a 2-point conversion later on if you miss on that. Seemed like a little bit of a strange call, but nonetheless, there it was. It turned out to be the difference in the game. So what do we know about any of this? That had to be analytics they were learning. I will let you run, John. Thanks so much. Always a pleasure, my friend. We'll talk to you again next week. Great job on the show today, and we'll have to get down there. Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill. Now it looks like things are going to be on track.
Sounds great, guys, and I can't wait to see you guys next week.
All right, sounds good. John Congemi, ladies and gentlemen. All right, what do you think, Lubie? You okay now with all of that? What are you going to do? I mean, they lost the game.
I just think people are going to go, oh, gosh, you're being dramatic. I'm like, to me, the season's over. Like, to me, I still think they can win the division and probably do. They have a 2-game lead. If they beat the Jets, the Bills lose next week. It's a 3-game lead with 3 games left. I feel like they'll win the division. But they went from having a shot at the 1 seed, actually controlling their own destiny to a 1 seed, to now, to me, they're going to fight for the 3 or 4.
Yeah.
That is where this team's been and where the team doesn't win. Like, this team needs to be at home to really have a chance to do anything in the playoff. To me, you didn't put this roster together to get that 1 playoff win. Like, you did what the Rams did. You know why the Rams are okay sucking right now? They went to 2 different Super Bowls and won a Super Bowl. If you go all in like this team has gone all in and lose in the first round 2 straight years, it was a fucking disaster. And that last night's game to me was their season. Like, they had a chance to be 10-3 and really have a shot at that 1 seed. Now they're going to be fighting uphill to try and get a 3 or 4 seed. And I don't see them going on the road and beating the Ravens. I don't see them going on the road and beating the Chiefs. I just doesn't feel like they're going to do that. So, like, I'm not trying to be dramatic. I've just watched every moment of every game from this team.
You saw the whole season go up in smoke.
And last night, all the things that worried me about this team came into play, and they couldn't overcome them. And that's scary to me.
It was a stunning result. And, if it wasn't an eye-opener, it should have been. That's for sure. All right, we're going to run. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Tony Segreto will go old school with us tomorrow, brought to you by Texas Roadhouse Restaurants right here on the Defo Show with one Mike Lubitz. Tony Bruno Sports Network. We ran into a snag yesterday when they tried to run some Christmas music into the show. That was weird, Lubie. I mean, we've experienced a lot of stuff with that. I know eventually it's going to work out, and I feel pretty confident about that.
Right,
and it should, in the long term, be a lot of fun. We'll see.
It's one of us.
But Tony Bruno Sports Network. So far, I mean, we looked like we were on a little bit of a roll there, and I got a couple of shows off without a hitch. And then yesterday, got blown off for the last half hour where Dave Hyde was going to join us. And how appropriate to have Dave on today. I think it's even better. Yeah,
it's better today.
the fuck is going on out there? All right. We'll see you guys tomorrow, and we'll have the Tony Bruno Sports Network radio show coming your way 10 o'clock on the East Coast here. So good to have you guys with us today. Thanks so much for tuning in. See you next time as we leave you now that.
The time.
No, is the Mayo show on the road somewhere, Lubie? Am I unaware of that?
Let me get rid of that.
What's that?
Yeah, we're at Swirl Wine Bistro off of Atlantic Boulevard in Margate. Swirl Wine Bistro.
Wow. Swirl Wine Bistro. All right. Sounds good. All right. All right. See you on the other shows here. It's now 9:06.
Let's go to eat a damn snack.
Look what they done to my soul.